Hey, what up? This is Gino Ray. You are listening to Between Two Cultures. I'm sorry. Native as I can be, Between Two Cultures. And I'm your host, Gino Ray. I think I mentioned that. I'm laying in bed next to a very sick Chaveo, Philip Charles Bat Ray. Some sort of viral thing. Goop coming out of his eyes and everything. So just laying here relaxing and listening to him snore. Having a lot of fun with the podcast. This will be episode number 6. So 6 weeks into it, interviewing a person I've never met before, but was kind of put in touch with by a guy I work with. His name's Quinton Gardner. Fascinating story, and this is going to be the longest podcast I've done to date, just because there was so much to cover. So we basically broke it up into 2 parts. We're kind of just getting his personal journey, but then we're going to talk about his band Full Metal Jackson, which is a heavy metal Michael Jackson cover band. So and we went for an hour 2 nights ago, and we could have gone on even longer, but I want to make this somewhat concise and try to hold the listener's attention. But really interesting guy, really wild story, and he just had been I think wanting to tell this story for a while. So I'm excited. I'm going to be talking to him in a couple nights to kind of do part 2 about the band. And that should be pretty interesting, because I want to know how you come up with a Michael Jackson cover band that plays heavy metal. The idea is just funny to me. So had a good time last week episode with Nikki and Noah, and talking about interracial relationships. And I got a text from Noah afterwards just saying that they had thought of some more examples of I guess things they had bumped into or encountered or whatever as an interracial couple. And that's what I found about doing these podcasts, is I always think of something afterwards that would have fit so well, or been a good follow-up, or been a good direction to take it. But what can you do? I've done 5 of these, so I think it's all right if there's a couple wrinkles. And on that note, as far as being 5 episodes into this, I am definitely looking for people that whether they're mixed or they have a view on race relations now or race relations back in the day, which was a Wednesday. If you feel like you got something to say, or have a voice, or maybe don't like, maybe you think everybody's being too sensitive about race nowadays, I would love to have you on. Or if you know somebody that would, get me in touch with them. I'm always looking for guests. I've got some emails out to a couple different places, and definitely looking for people to have good conversations with. So you won't make any money off of it, but you will be helping me out. So on that note, let's go ahead and get into Quinton Gardner part 1, and then we will get into Quinton Gardner part 2. Thank you for listening. Let's go. All right, we are gathered here again on a Sunday evening to speak with Quinton Gardner of the band Full Metal Jackson. This is a very interesting interview for me, because this is the first time in this podcast I'm interviewing somebody I've never met before. and don't even really know a whole lot about. So this should be pretty fun, learning some new things and hearing some new ideas. And so thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Absolutely. Very excited to do it.
Okay, so now I'm gonna get some of this wrong, I'm sure, but your parents are I was told they're either classically trained musicians or they're opera singers, or what's the story there?
They're opera soloists. So they sang lead and supporting roles in operas all over the world. So, all across America, Europe, Asia, Australia. We spent a lot of time everywhere, pretty much except like parts of Asia and South America and Russia. But they're opera soloists.
And are they both black?
No. So my dad's a white guy. From his family's originally from Earlville, New York. Tiny little, like almost a hamlet, I guess, like just a tiny little village in upstate New York. And my mom's family is from Smithfield, Virginia. Represent, shout out Smithfield meatpacking plant. And she was born. It's kind of a really interesting thing about her origin is we're not really 100% sure about it.
Right.
Her mother's black, and up until a few years ago, she thought she shared a sister, a father with her closest sister, and she was always told growing up that they had the same father, and he was black and Native American heritage, and he was by all accounts a pretty gruff person, and he was and into some shit. I mean, there was the kind of shit that goes on in the swamp in Smithfield back in the day. My grandmother, I don't think when the kids were young, but she eventually ended up running like the local Negro speakeasy in Smithfield. So she was like selling gin for a nickel a shot or whatever out of her place, and obviously there's no regulation, so all kinds of shit would go down at the house. But her, my mom, like I said, my mom thought that she and her sister shared the same father, and then a few years ago, well, maybe about half a decade ago now, I was thinking about starting a food cart business. Probably even longer ago than that, probably like 6-7 years. And I asked my mom if she had any pictures of her father, because I was, I wanted to give it kind of a family theme, and I wanted to show my ancestors and my very white grandfather, who lived in Hell's Kitchen and other parts of New York at one point when he grew up, and he did lots of different jobs. One of which was he was a hot dog vendor on Coney Island for a little while, and I think he sold cigarettes. I'm not sure, but I was like, I wanted to see if I could find a picture of Cliff selling hot dogs, and then if I can find a picture, I was like, do you just have any pictures of your father? So she went to her sister and was talking to her about it, and I think yeah, there's a whole bunch of this story. But she's like, well, you keep saying our father. Her sister's like, we don't have the same father. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is like a 67-year-old woman or something, 66-year-old woman. And they're like, what are you talking about? And she said, yeah, my father's so-and-so and so-and-so. Your father's B.C. Birdsong, which was a name she'd never heard before. But his family was like an affluent white family that lived in Suffolk, Virginia. And my great-grandmother used to clean houses. And I guess one day she decided to take she used to take my grandmother along with her to do work. And this would have been when my grandma was a little older, in her 20s and that, and she ended up pregnant, and apparently everyone in the town except my mother knew that her father was this white guy whose family owned like a furniture business or something like that, and he used to come around. But my mom was sent away from her family when she was 10 years old. She was sent to live in I'll say Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I could be wrong about that. There's a couple of different places, but she went to live with a friend of the family's. And I just feel like I'm just rambling on.
Well, this stuff is fascinating, and the crazy thing about it is it's not the only story like that.
Yeah, for sure. And this is why I told you. So I'll just keep going. Stop me if you have any questions.
Okay.
So she ended up going to live with a friend of the family's who was she was a real pillar of her community. She was the head of the school board. She was involved in all kinds of outreach programs for youth at the time, and she was a very strict disciplinarian. So my mother went from living in a swamp in Smithfield, Virginia, with a mother who worked 2-3 jobs and was never home. She was raised by her sisters. So it was a lot of freedom, a lot of hijinks, a lot of tomfoolery. And then all of a sudden, 10 years old, boom, she's stuck in this sort of very strict situation where she's the only child. And she thought that she was sent because her mother couldn't afford to take care of all the kids that she had. And she had, at the time, we thought, and it would have been 4 kids from 3 different fathers. But it turns out it's probably more likely it was 4 kids from 4 different fathers. So my mother always thought that she was sent away to sort of take care of a financial hardship on the family. But in light of newer evidence, we kind of assume that the chances are that she was sent away because they wanted to avoid the scandal. And because black families keep secrets I don't know any other community that's that tight-lipped when it comes to stuff like that. So anyway, it was just she ends up in I keep saying North Carolina, but I'm not sure if that is what. But her aunt, she called her Aunt Annie, had a very strict regimen. So when you got up in the morning, chores. It was just chores and school. That's like all you did. My mom said she had 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon to ride her bicycle. That was the only time she ever had to herself to just do what she wanted. And that if she misbehaved, her aunt would punish her by not letting her go to school. Because going to school was like a wonderful thing for her. Which there's some genius to this woman's method, to Aunt Annie's method, that she would beg her to let her go to school. But at the same time, there's a pretty intense level of home living. She wasn't allowed to sit on the edge of her bed because beds aren't for sitting on, they're for lying on, and you can mess up, the side or whatever. She did the dishes every night. She vacuumed, she cleaned, and the crazy thing is, of course, she did all that stuff up into her adult life too. And my father and I were dreadful slobs. And my father, my dad came from a situation where he never really had to pick up after himself, I'm assuming. Yeah. And so she continued to do that, which is crazy. This is I feel like this could be hours and hours.
Yeah. Okay. We'll try and jump ahead. So did they meet your parents? Did they meet through music or before music, or how did that come about?
So they met. They met performing in opera, playing 2 roles they only played once. So my mother was playing, I want to say, Micaela in Carmen, and my father was playing a character called Zuniga. And after that, and after they got together, every time after that, they were both playing lead roles. So she was playing Carmen and he was playing Escamillo. But that was like they met and hit it off. I think my dad may have had a girlfriend at the time. I can't remember, but they got together and then ended up doing some sort of a rarity, an opera tour with this guy Peter Brook, who was a very famous theater director, English theater director who worked out of Paris. And he had this theater in Paris called Les Bouffes du Nord, and he decided he was going to do an opera. And so he did a theatrical adaptation with full music of Carmen, and took it around the world. And they did that tour 3 times, I think. One of which I was in utero, and then two of which I was, or maybe one before I was, but at least I think 2 of which I was on.
So what year would that have been then?
So that would have been like 1981, and then when I was alive would have been like 84, 85, I think, like around that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how they met doing Carmen, and then they got together and they started doing this. They moved to Binghamton, New York, which is where I was born, which is no one really knows much about Binghamton now. It's one of those little American cities that just got decimated by economic, depression and all kinds of other industries moving out. IBM was actually founded there, and built up very big, and there was like a lot of stuff going on there. They had, like some musicians like Slam Stewart, who wrote that song, The Flatfoot Floogie. He lived there. And they had this opera program, Tri-Cities Opera, TCO, which was founded by this guy Peyton Hibbett, this guy Carmen Savoca, and Placido Domingo went through their program. That was kind of like their big original claim to fame. So there was a lot going on in this place. And there was also factory manufacturing, weapons, Lockheed Martin, people like that. And then all of a sudden, everything just kind of pulled out all at once.
So it's this kind of gritty, industrial sort of town with a flourishing opera program.
With a flourishing, just art scene, kind of, in general. It was like a really interesting place. And it was very multicultural. And there were an inordinate amount of interracial relationships right around the time that my parents were together as well. So a lot of my friends growing up were mixed, or a lot of kids that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a kind of a utopic place. I remember it from my childhood. Just even folks, because even working class people had shit. They had enough to feel good and to feel uplifted, and people were going to the park. We were the carousel capital of the world. People had there was just all kinds of stuff going on, and then it came to such a grinding halt, and there was nothing for the youth to do, and in this landscape of joblessness and boredom, of course, it's just nothing good breeds in that environment. And anyway, getting off the track again, but so my parents, they met, and they go to this to Tri-Cities Opera, to this opera program, and what they did at TCO was they would basically, you would pay for your lessons, they would get you sort of cheap housing, because the people that were on the opera board, a lot of them owned a bunch of real estate in the city. So you would get this like affordable housing that was nice, and you would only have to work part-time, and then you would come to your lessons, and you would pay for those, but then you would, when you performed, you would be paid for your performances. So you got to see what it was really like on a small microcosmic scale to be in the opera world. And they both excelled in this program. And what ends up happening is after that you get to a certain echelon, they feel like you're ready to move on. They would take you to opera houses in Europe, or to places where people they knew worked, and they would audition you around, essentially. And so I'm probably skipping ahead, but my father, basically, when I was like 7 years old, we just spent a lot of time traveling around and just sort of being all over the world. And Binghamton was still our home base. And when I was 7, like 2 weeks after I turned 7, we moved to Germany because my father got a job singing in Cologne Opera House, which was like a contract position, and was a very sort of prestigious thing that made a decent amount of money. My mom, on the other hand, kind of just did a lot of the stuff that people wanted to see her do. So she did the same, like a smaller repertoire, but she did it much, like all over the world, and a lot of the time in much bigger venues. So we were split up a lot once we moved to Europe. I think the idea was that if we moved to Germany, we would all be able to be together more. But for various reasons, it was very difficult. Immigration is very difficult over there, and my mom not having a job offer in Germany, she wasn't allowed to work in Germany. So she had to be gone all the time. You should probably guide me or steer me a little bit.
Well, so if you're coming from this like idyllic kind of a place with a lot of mixed kids and couples, and going to Germany, what was that like?
So it was really difficult because I had just really started to sort of figure out how I fit into my community as a kid. Like I had just gotten out of first grade, and there was a few kids that I was friends with that I've been friends with like my whole life, like either from age like 2 or 3 or age 5, and I was like really, really happy in Binghamton. And when we moved, it was only supposed to be for like 2 years. It was supposed to be like, we're going to be gone for 2 years, which to a 7-year-old feels like a third of your life span. So when we got there, I just kept saying, it's only going to be for a couple of years, but that got harder and harder to say to yourself, just because it didn't matter. It was like, it's so brutal right now. First thing first of all, Binghamton's a pretty dreary place weather-wise. But Cologne was almost more so because there wasn't, like, at least in Binghamton, we had rain and thunderstorms and lightning. But in Germany, the weather's much more like it is here. It's just like gray and it drizzles. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. Except, here we have way more interesting cloud formations in Portland. So that's in Oregon. So that's something else. Like in Germany, it's just like concrete sky. Like in Cologne, it was just like concrete sky most of the time. And I didn't understand it at the time, of course, because we didn't really. It was before the internet, and we didn't have any idea what we were walking into as an interracial family. But I had never. I was around my parents all the time because we were traveling, so I was pretty sheltered up until that point. But I had never. It was the first time that I ever saw hatred in a stranger's eyes. I think was when we moved to Germany.
And did they try to brace you for that at all?
No, not really. I think they were very naive in the sense that they thought, up until pretty recently even still, that people were basically good and that the world was basically moving in a direction of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't know jack shit about Germany. Not really. And they're like, "Oh, it's a developed European country," and World War II, that was so long ago.
Right.
So we get over there, and
yeah, they only tried to take on the world a couple of times. You know, the country of Germany.
Well, they've been all over. They've been all over the place. But when you're just traveling, when you're an entertainer traveling from place to place, eating in fancy restaurants. First of all, if you're an entertainer, it doesn't matter what color you are most of the time. People are just like, oh, they get excited. It's like that scene in Do the Right Thing where Spike Lee's character is telling John Turturro's character that all of his heroes are black, and yet he hates black people. It's like a similar, like if you're singing opera, if you're part of high culture, then it's totally different. Then you're just exotic. Then it's like almost more amazing. But
so they're not really getting a taste of real life.
Exactly. So when you live somewhere and you have to see the same people every day, strangers every day in the same situation, it's a whole different kettle of fish. So I remember when I was a kid, so I was like 7 years old, we moved to Germany, and after the first couple of weeks, my mom would take me on because my parents kept saying, "What do we do about, childcare?" And they were like, and the Germans were like, "Well, what do you mean?" They're like, "Well, we can't just leave him at home alone." And they were like, "Yes, why not?" Like all Germans leave their children home. You lock the door and you tell them don't open it for strangers. There's not, and there really wasn't a lot of crime. And people, very different idea. Kids are much more self-sufficient at that age. But so my mom, so they were like same thing. They're like, well, about getting to school? You have to drive to school every day. And they're like, well, he can take the tram. So my journey to school was probably like 35 minutes, and which consisted of a 7-minute walk, a 20-minute tram ride, and then another however many minute walk to get into my school. But there's a lot that can happen on that tram ride, and and a lot did happen to me on tram rides here, one way or the other. Or different experiences I had riding public transport my whole life, but at that age it was interesting. Like the first person who yelled at me, the first person who just flipped out at me for a small thing was I was riding my bicycle and I rang my bell, and I think the guy, the older gentleman ahead of me, was deaf. I mean, I had a hearing aid, but I scuffed his pants with my wheel, and the dude just lost his fucking shit. Turned around and got right in my face, and he was like wearing one of those crazy little Bavarian hats with the feather coming out of it, which they think that that's not a very Cologne thing to do. And he's yelling in my face, and he's pointing at me, and he's telling me that my mother's going to have to pay for his laundry bills, and he's calling me a little beast and all of this other whatever. I had never experienced anything like that. A stranger had never flipped out on me before. Certainly not a completely grown person, and I was a child. So that threw me through a loop.
And that was all in German.
I ended up going back and talking to my mom about that. And she was pissed because just a couple days before we had been on the tram, and the first thing we realized when we got to Germany was like, oh shit, people are staring at us. And not like, looking away, like people, like every single person on this tram is staring directly at us.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that, first of all, German society, especially at that time, I don't know what it's like now, but like eye contact, their comfort zone and comfort level for staring at each other and being looked at is much different than ours. And there was actually a study that was done sometime like in the late 90s, I think, or like the early aughts, of like the different countries and how many seconds to the second that it's acceptable to look at somebody, depending on where you are. In Germany, it's very long. You can just look at people. But it used to drive my mother fucking crazy because she was just like, what the fuck is wrong with these people?
Yeah.
Why, and she literally, she ooga booga'd some people. Like, she would just look back at people, ooga booga. Because she was like, what the hell are you staring at? So this guy, I scuffed his pants, he yelled at me, I was like, whatever. The point of this, though, the next part of the story is, once I started riding the tram by myself, the first person who ever beat the shit out of me in my life, was the first black person I met when I got to Germany. I was riding the Max, and this kid walks up to me, black kid, and, you know, for the first time in my life, my heart kind of jumped at seeing a black person as opposed to a white person, because, like I said, I grew up in a very multicultural environment, and it was the first time I was like, oh, God, like a young, brown-skinned person, like, this could be a good moment, right?
Yeah.
So he comes up to me and he starts talking to me. I don't understand German. So I just kind of made some like, hey, I don't understand you motions or whatever, like, sorry. And at the time, I had no idea what was going on in his mind. But now, he was probably like, what the hell, little light-skinned ass mother, what do you think, you're better than me? You can't talk to me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what he was saying, but those are the hand motions he started making.
How much older was he?
Huh?
How much older was he?
Maybe like a year older than me.
Oh, okay.
So if I was 7, he was maybe 8.
Okay.
And so we start, and he's still trying to talk to me, and I'm just like, hey, man, I don't understand you. And he just gave me this look like, wow. And I got off the tram and started walking to my school, and he was following me, and he was talking to me the whole time. And at some point, I started to realize, like, this isn't going well. Like, something not good. And then he just picked up a big stick and just started beating the shit out of me in the street. And the craziest fucking part was, fucking German grown-ups are walking past 2 kids with backpacks on their backs, obviously walking to school. One of them is thrashing the other with a big stick, and no one stopped. No one even looked in our direction.
Wow.
And that shit happened, then proceeded to happen for I don't know how many weeks. Like, he just kicked the shit out of me every time I saw him on my way to school. And my mother finally got wind of it. And she was like, what the fuck? Like, you know, she didn't say that, but she was just like, you know, you can't let this kid beat on you. You got to stand up for yourself. She's like, you know, you got an umbrella. He hits you, hit him back. And I was looking at her like, you don't know this kid.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good idea, but I was like, whatever. My mom told me to do it. I'm going to do it. So the next time I see him, he's got a big stick. He takes a good couple cracks at me, and I turn around and I jammed the end of my umbrella into his sternum, and it stopped him for a second. He staggered back. Mm-hmm. And then when his eyes popped back up, I knew I fucked up. I don't even remember the beating. He just fucking wailed on me. And then my mother realized that his mother worked at the opera house that my father worked at in the dance department, because she put 2 and 2 together and was like, these are literally the only 2 black people we've seen, like only 2 people of African descent that we've seen in Germany since we moved here. She's like, this can't be a coincidence. She's got to work. Because so many other people we knew that were races that weren't common other races to be there, Turkish or Bosnian or something, were almost all involved in theater somehow. So she goes into, and then my mom was this kind of mom, and she goes into she didn't tell me she was going to do it. She goes into the opera house, and she goes into where this woman's dancing, and she goes, oh, hi. She's like, you must be so-and-so. She's like, oh, yeah. She's like, oh, you know, my husband, Jake Gardner, he sings here at the opera. And she said, oh, yes, you know, I heard him do Don Giovanni or whatever. That was great. She said, yes. My mom said, you know, our sons go to school together. And she said, oh, really? Oh, yeah. She's like, Brees, right? That's your son's name, Brees? And she was like, oh, yeah. And she said, yeah. She said, I just have to tell you, if your son ever touches my son again, you will be hearing from me, and it will not be as pleasant a conversation as the one we're having now. I promise you, or something to that effect.
Right.
And then he never fucked with me again. But there was like so many lessons learned over the course of that series of weeks of him bullying me that I couldn't even learn until way later on, because I was stuck in Europe for so long, and I had no concept really being mixed race and having a white dad, like, there is a certain level of privilege that you experience that like, and I didn't really, it took so long to be able to process that shit, because I was like, why the fuck did that kid light me up like that? Like, I just,
What do you think it was? What was his big beef?
I think that he saw the first African descent person that he'd seen since he moved there, and he tried to make a connection, and that person poo-pooed him, and was a light-skinned American, whatever, thinks you're better than me, motherfucker, and that probably broke him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But he didn't know that I just didn't speak the language. He didn't know I just got there. There's no way for us to have that conversation.
Right. Yeah.
Because of the language barrier. So it was, yeah. I don't know what it is. And it's, I asked myself so many questions. After being in school in Germany for 3 years, so from age 7 to 8, so 7, 8, 9, I was in school in Germany. I ended up being sent to boarding school in England, partially because I had started to get into situations my parents didn't know how to control. Like, when I was 9, like a 13-year-old skinhead beat the shit out of me on the train. I mean, we had a fight. I did pretty good, but he was 13 and I was 9, and he fly kicked me in the head like Bruce Lee, and I didn't know how to deal with that at that age. So,
few would.
So So they were like, you know what? We don't know what's going on. Like, we don't know if we can handle this. Both of them. My mom was gone most of the time. My dad was working. They're like, he needs to be in one place. It would be great if he could be somewhere he could speak his own language, and like yada 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 yada. A lot of justifications. At any rate, I ended up going to boarding school in England at age 10, and the second African kid I met, black kid I met, like really in Europe, was the first, gave me my first black eye.
Wow.
This kid, Alfred Sombo, who was Zambian. Now, no fucking idea what I'm walking into here. Like, what we had researched was what people had told us, and other folks that my dad had met in England who he'd stayed with, who we very amicable with, had told him that, the father had gone to this school, both their kids had gone to this school, that it was a great place, and that, and they seemed very, very well adjusted and happy, and so it was like, yeah, sure, and people are clamoring to get their kids into these kind of schools. So my parents thought, maybe this is a good option, and they'll get a great education, yada, yada, yada. And so anyway, I go to school, meet this kid, Alfred. Like, I had spent so much time around adults because we'd always been traveling. So I wasn't really used to being around kids all the time a lot. And even a lot of the kids that I got along with when I was younger were kids that were, a little less rambunctious, a little more, I don't know what the right word is, but they just, not mature, but just not just so fired up all the time.
Yeah.
And these kids, some of them had already been in boarding school for a couple of years, so they'd already been separated from their parents from a younger age. The first time the headmaster put us in, by the way, when I got left at school, like, I broke down. Like, I did not do good. I cried for 2 fucking months, pretty much, just straight. And every time, like, the first 2 years of going back to school, every single time was brutal. Every single time was just like, don't want to leave my parents, don't want to go fucking back there.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually that feeling goes away, which is another whole kettle of fish. But this kid, the first night that the headmaster turned the lights off and walked out. So my first boarding school room was 8 kids. So it was 4 beds and then 2 bunk beds. 3 bunk beds and 2 beds. Or 3 beds. There was a lot of kids in this room.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the headmaster turned the light off, I can't remember if we had to say a little prayer before he left or whatever. He was like, and he's like, all right, good night, boys. It's like, good night, sir. And he turns the light off, and he walks out, and then just fucking bedlam. I mean, like, madness. Like, kids are jumping on their beds. Kids are running across beds. Alfred Sumbo, tiny little African boy from Zambia, just jumps in the middle of the fucking room, bare-ass naked with a big Vaselined up cock, and just goes, ah! Ah! And just shaking his dick around. I'm like, where the fuck am I? Like, why have I been sent here? This is insanity. Kids are just fucking like, I don't know. It was just madness. So, but that poor fucking kid, I didn't really, again, I didn't realize, you don't realize all these things when you're young, but he just got shit on all the time. Him and his cousin, Charles. Alfred and Charles came from Zambia, and from what I get, he would tell us stories about his dad, and I would be like, these sound made up. But then after I was in the boarding school system for a while longer, I was like, yeah, maybe this songs are made up. But he would talk about how his dad was my dad is a very aggressive, violent, scary man, and people are scared of him. That's the way he put it. And then he had a lot to do with weapons and fighting people. And they had this guy who looked after them, and their dad put him up in London, and it's like a shitty little flat, Uncle Willie. And they fucking hated Uncle Willie, because Uncle Willie was like the equivalent of like a super, super country ass motherfucker. Like one day they're like, he's like, our father gives us so much money every week to spend for ourselves. But when we go to Uncle Willie, he always takes our money.
Gee.
Last time he made us spend our entire allowance on a video cassette, and then spend 2 hours trying to figure out how to make a video cassette play without a video cassette player. I'm just like, this is this kid's life. But he asked me one day, he says, Quinton, do you think I am a good boy? Now, I'm a black American kid. If another black kid asks me if I think they're a good boy, my natural response would be like, no, man, you bad motherfucker. I'm not going to call another a good boy. We just don't have that terminology really in America in the same way that they did over there at the time. But I said, no, man, you bad motherfucker. And I swear to fucking God, he made this sound. He goes, and then just clocked me right in my eye as hard as he could. Wow. And I just went, I literally just said, why? I instantly went and told a teacher what had happened. Because I was just like, no, I'm squealing on this one. Mm-hmm. This doesn't make any fucking sense to me, and I can't be living in a room with a dude who's going to punch me for just trying, So, and I had no idea why he was acting out like this. I had no idea why he was so pissed off all the time. But I started to realize that he had friends amongst the more popular kids, kind of the troublemakers, and he got specifically really close to this one kid, Robert Campbell. They got really close, and I could tell that there were times when he finally felt like he fucking fit in a little bit. You know what I mean? Which is tough. And he it's like so many things when you're brown skin, you kind of have to work doubly hard at some things.
Right.
He worked doubly hard at trying to be liked by these kids. And then there was this one day, I can't remember what the deal was, why they got into an argument. I just think Robert was just being a prick, and Alfred got mad, and they started kind of wrestling around. But I just remember him just burying it, rubbing that kid's face in the dirt, and kicking dirt on him, and just kind of he might as well have spit on him. I felt like, and then only a couple weeks later, this other kid, who I'm still friends with, and it's we were in boarding school from a very young age, from age 10, and he ended up coming to my secondary school. So we were in boarding school together for almost 8 years. So we have a lot of history. But I will never forget when we were 9 years old, 10 years old, 10, 11 years old, in the computer center. And I can't remember what Alfred said. It wasn't that big a deal. He was just ribbing Frank a little bit. And Frank said, I remember he said, "Oh, shut up, Alfred, you black dog." And he said it just like
God.
that. I was like, what the fuck? And he got reprimanded by the teacher. Like, the teacher said, like, Francis Tolbert, use that kind of language or whatever. But I remember looking at Alfred and just seeing the like how crushed he was by that. And that was something that was tangible to me. Like, I could understand that.
Right.
I was fucking horrified. And it's funny because if a kid went home and told their parents that shit now, like, I was in the computer lab and another kid called the only other black kid in my class a black dog to his face, and all that happened was he got scolded.
Yeah.
They pulled you out of the fucking school so fucking fast, their heads would spin. But then it was like, well, cultural, blah, 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 blah. And, it's that first 3 years of being in boarding school, my first boarding school, I really learned, because I had an experience with this kid who was like one of my best friends. This kid, Tom Dowdle, he was like a god, even at that age. It's a crazy thing to say, but at age 12, he was like chiseled, like cut, fucking dude, ridiculous, like Clark Kent hairstyle. He was the captain of the rugby team. He played soccer. His batting average in cricket was infinity because he just kept retiring. Like, he just hadn't gotten out all season. His batting average was infinity. He played the clarinet. He was an amazing visual artist. He was a theater actor. He was fucking James Bond. He was a miraculous person. And he and I were very close. We hung out all the time. We did plays together. We played an orchestra together. We played sports together. We were really close. And I can't remember what it was about, but there was one night when I remember that he just completely sided against me for no good reason with all the other white kids. And even though he and I were supposed to be like Evan and Ivory or whatever, and I was just like, dude, like, that was the first time I really realized, like, it doesn't, no matter how much you try, and even though there may be some people who do really get it and get you and get that you are actually all the same and that you're all one and that there is such a thing as racial superiority, like, but at the end of the day, like, you're not them. Like, you are other. You are always going to be a part. And the really brutal part of the most brutal part of that realization was coming back to America after being in Europe for 11 years. I was supposed to be there for 2 years. I was there for 11 years. And my only thought in my mind was go back to the States, go back to this, because that's the mantra I'd been saying to myself since I was 7 years old, but I didn't really think about it. Because when I got back here, all I knew about America was propaganda, really, and my own idyllic, memories of my childhood, which are probably colored through rose-tinted glasses of just like the lifestyle that we lived back then.
Yeah.
And coming back to America was like, it was nightmarish in a sense that, like, when you have a dream about a place and you recognize the place, but it's all different. It's all different and sinister.
It's like a Twilight Zone episode.
It's just there. Huh?
It's like a Twilight Zone episode.
Exactly. Oh, you want to know an interesting fun fact? Rod Serling, the creator of the Twilight Zone, is from Binghamton.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, and it's like the fucking Twilight Zone. Like, it's a weird little place. It's in a valley that is almost like, you could drive through New York State in pure sunshine for hours and hit Binghamton, and there's just a rim of clouds over it. Just like a perfect circular, like, rim of darkness over that place. And, like, scientists have claimed that there's a weird energy vortex from there. Spiritualists believe it has this weird, but then it's also just like this random little shithole that nobody knows about. Really odd. But Rod Serling, he's from Syracuse originally, which is about an hour away, but he grew up in Binghamton. He went to Binghamton High School. There's a plaque to him, like, out on in front of the school and everything. But yes, it was like a Twilight Zone episode, and that I've spent the last however many years being educated, essentially in the belly of the beast, like educated, like being handed the true shit by rich fucking assholes who keep knowledge for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
and the fundamental difference, I'd say, between how public and private schools are taught, at least in England, and at least what I can tell from how public school is here, is that in public school they teach you how to regurgitate and how to regurgitate facts and how to pass tests, and that's it. And in private school they teach you how to identify bias and recognize it. They teach you how to think for yourself. They teach you to question absolutely everything anyone says to you because they might have an ulterior motive and you don't know what their purposes are. It's a totally different, and just that slight difference is like it's criminal, actually. Really. And when I came back and saw what was going on with American propaganda, the American propaganda machine, which I remember writing to a friend of mine after being here back here for about 5 or 6 months, and saying this American propaganda machine would make Joseph Goebbels cream in his pants. Like the Nazi Germany, Stalin, like these people cannot conceive of the level of insidiousness that is present in every moment, every day of Americans' lives. Like, it's fucking bonkers. And what's weird is when you're gone from a place for a long time and you come back, it's almost like when you lived with your parents your whole life and then you go somewhere else and you don't see them for a few years and then you see them again with fresh eyes and you're like, oh, these people are crazy. Right. Like, it's like that kind of, you have that kind of, like, I'd been gone from America for so long and I'd been indoctrinated into a whole different way of thinking and a whole different, little things like commercials in England are different. They're equally stupid and weird, but they're different stupid and weird. And you get you get used to your particular stupid, weird shit that you see every day that's become normalized, that you don't think about. But when you go somewhere else and you see it through, sort of neutral eyes, you just go, what the hell is going on here? Like, the first thing I noticed was that every time a commercial came on, the energy levels were like Sunday, like that kind of thing. Like, we're doing a crazy closeout sale. Everything's got to go. We're closing out. You're going to do a sale. Blah, 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 blah. Like, it was just like, this is fucking crazy. Like, no one's that excited or happy all the time. But this was like, and I noticed that it wasn't just that, though. It was like, you go to the store, everyone's smiling. Everyone's trying to, like, put on their customer service face. Have a nice day. Like, nobody fucking says that shit. Right. And, like, these little things where you're just like, this place is kind of different. And, not to say that other places are any better. Trust me. Most places these days in this world are pretty equally fucked in their own peculiar ways. Ours is just, like, really big and gross and in everybody's face right now. But, like, I feel like I've just been exploding with words.
Well, let's do this. We got about 10 minutes left here.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about the band a little bit.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Do you think that this is not about the band at all? Do you think the country is better about race, or is it worse than ever?
Okay.
From your own eyes.
It's both. It's worse in a way because we were naive before. We used to think that it was a different way. And enough people thinking that it's one way is enough to make it that way, really. So if you're always around people who are racially accepting in general, and you don't feel threatened by that, you don't feel threatened by them, then you're going to feel like, but the issue is that there are underlying factors and issues that have always been there, that have always been kind of rotten, that are now just being brought to the surface. And on top of that, we're dealing with, all of this is happening staunchly in the face of the rise of neo-fascism and white supremacy, on a global scale. So it's a really weird. It's just everything's exacerbated by the fact that we're moving towards an incredibly dark period, or we're in an incredibly dark period.
What are you going to tell your kid about what to expect or beware of as they get older?
So it's tough. My kid is. Okay. My kid is going to be a Norwegian, African, Chinook wasp, pretty much. That's her heritage, more or less. There's some other stuff thrown in it too, but that's her heritage, more or less. And so she's gonna be she's probably gonna pass for white. She has very light skin. She has gray eyes. She has she has reddish hair. But she's definitely a black person. If you go by the one drop rule, she's got lips and a forehead, and
Yeah.
But so it's going to be interesting to see. I'm curious to see how she's perceived, how she decides to express herself in the world, how she decides to portray herself. I feel like on some level you kind of have to take things as they come. I don't think I want to try to prepare her for too much, because I don't want her to feel like she's walking into a hornet's nest. But I do want her to know that the hornet's nest exists.
Right.
So it's it's kind of it's a weird balancing act. But one thing I will definitely tell her for sure. The one thing I will tell her, because I want her to tell other people who she knows who are in similar, because she has a lot of. We're fortunate that my partner's family. She has is a very multicultural family. She has a big white part of the family. She has a Native American part of the family. She has a big black part of her family. So my daughter will get to experience all of that, which is good, because I was very separated from black people for a long time, from black Americans at least. And so much as it kills me to say it, there's just parts of that culture and that society that I will never be able to really access, or never really be able to. And I don't know if that's my fears about not being accepted, or if it is. And there's so many different factors that go into the relationship between mixed race black folks and black folks. But what I will tell her for certain is this: is that no matter what anybody tells you, you are a true American. You are literally the definition of the new world. You are the result of the melting pot. You are the only real way forward for this country that doesn't involve mass spread genocide and fear and terror. People who we need to get to a point where no one has a dog in the race, and this shit that we're going through now, this fucking diabolical ICE fucking shit, this Nazi fucking diabolical fucking shit that we are all culpably a part of at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even a new thing.
Right.
You know, you watch any documentary about Ellis Island, read about Ellis Island, read about the history of American eugenics. I mean, we gave Hitler the fucking idea. And American oil, Standard Oil, paid to help to put the rails up to fucking Auschwitz and other concentration camps. So, like, this is not a new thing.
Right.
There was a period in our history where openly, you can read it in the papers. It's not like it was a secret. They were trying to create a great white Nordic race of Americans in America. And they were excited about the English coming over, excited about the Germans coming over, the Norwegians, but they didn't want the Italians, they didn't want the Irish, they didn't want the Chinese, you know, like, the same fucking bullshit, the same petty, but the hope is, the good part is, you know, that shit all happened, but it didn't last.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and now it's the demographics in this country are so vastly different than they were. You know, those particular folks' worst nightmare is coming true. But what's so sad is that they don't realize that it's like, you know, we could be Constantinople, but we act like it's, you know, like multiculturalism is the end of the world. But like historically, if you look back and you look at times where different races of people coexisted peacefully and traded in art and traded in culture and traded in, you know, just in life, just being around people of different cultures, different backgrounds, and different outlooks, all of that shit expands your mind. That's why I think the government doesn't like it. That's why I think there's something going on, because people want to stay trapped in this very narrow mindset, the same fucking mindset that won't let people admit that climate change is real.
Right.
Like, you know, and again, change is scary and it's rough and it's sometimes, and it's nobody really likes it, but like, the fact that people are willing to choose violence and hatred and loathing over the possibility of unity is really, I mean, that's a whole nother episode, because I think it goes back to education, which is something that we're just trying to absolutely decimate in this country. We're just leveling it. We're just crushing education. And it's so, I don't want to be like, it's so obvious. It's so obvious what's going on here. But because there's no fucking education and nobody's learning their history, nobody can identify these things, because the history books are outdated and bought by teachers who don't have any money. And it's like, it's a whirlwind, and it's all deliberate. That's what I think. Anyway.
Well, we got about a minute left. Do you want to do a part two about? I'm very intrigued about Full Metal Jackson, because I'm a big Michael Jackson fan. I'd love to hear how that all started and how you went from opera soloist parents to a metal. That sounds like an incredible journey. Do you want to do another one of these?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. I really appreciate your time, man, and rearranging your schedule to be on with me.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me to be on. And, I'm sorry it was such a just like bizarre stream of consciousness kind of rant, but you know, no one's really asked me a lot of these questions before, and I feel like they've just been like at the top of my skull, just trying to burst out.
Yeah.
Just trying to push it all down. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to just get some of this shit off my chest.
Absolutely. Okay, we're back. Quinton Gardner, part 2. Quinton, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you doing, man?
Real good. So, the first hour, we didn't get too much into the band Full Metal Jackson. So I was hoping we could get a good look at that, because the idea is very fascinating to me. And the heavy metal, if I'm understanding it right, the heavy metal Michael Jackson cover band.
Yes, that's correct. It's I like to think of it as an ultimate tribute band in a way, because we're doing all Michael Jackson songs, which is more in the style of a tribute band, but then we're also doing them in the style of different subgenres and different popular classic metal bands, and just basically. It basically started as an idea for. I had been in another group for about 9 years, extreme like death metal band called Only Soul. It was like very aggressive music, very very heavy, very sort of disjointed, and lots of different time signature changes and key changes, and just very kind of crazy all over the place. But it's a very sort of narrow market, which didn't really bother me, because that was like all I really wanted to do. But after playing like extreme metal almost exclusively for the better part of like almost 15 years, I think, I was just like, I kind of wanted to stretch my creative muscles in different directions, and I still wanted to. I spent so much time here building up a network in the metal scene. I felt like it was kind of totally not in my best interest to step completely out of that world. But I also was just like, I would like to be able to play some different, play through some different emotions, not just like anger and resentment and hatred and all the time. So I actually was talking to a friend of mine I used to work with, and he mentioned one day that he thought that would be a cool idea, heavy metal Michael Jackson tribute band. And I said, yeah, well, I was like, I've thought about it, I've definitely considered it, but there's too many little things. It's like a lot of that music's really hard to make sound heavy and dark, because it's like take ABC for example,
right?
It's a Jackson 5 song, but I'm like, I do think there's absolutely no way you could possibly take such a bouncy, happy, upbeat tune, like everything about it, the rhythm, the choice of the notes, it's just like so not evil sounding. I don't know how you could make it into metal. But as I was having this conversation with him, my brain just sort of, we were talking about Smooth Criminal, the Alien Ant Farm rendition that they did. I don't know how many years ago, in like the early aughts. Yeah. This one-hit wonder, Alien Ant Farm, did a cover of Smooth Criminal, and it was pretty terrible, as I recall. And I just remember being like, if anyone was going to do this project, the first thing they'd have to do is figure out how to fix that mistake. Like, you'd have to be able to do Smooth Criminal metal style and make it cool. And as I was talking about that, it sort of started to creep into my head, this line from the main line from Smooth Criminal, and the main bass line, and my brain started deconstructing it and figuring out a way to play it in a totally different fashion. It happened to sound like Viking metal in my head, like I'm on a Marth. And I was like, I said, as we're talking, I said, hold on. I said, let me get back to you in a week. I think I might have an idea that we've kind of talked about it. And so then a week later, I was like, I think I might actually have an idea for a cool sounding version of Smooth Criminal. And then it just kind of went from there. I just kept listening to more Michael Jackson songs, and as I would listen to them, eventually, like, I would hear some part of a hook or some part of a riff that I was like, I just I'd make a connection like, ooh, that sounds like something, you know, so-and-so would do. That sounds like something, you know, Kiss would play, or that sounds like something that Motorhead would play. And then I would just kind of run with it from there. And then, you know, fast forward to now, and we're not releasing whole albums. Like I said, we're not trying to make any money off the recordings or anything like that yet, because we don't know what our rights are. But I've got, you know, probably 2 albums worth of music in my head, and then like a quarter of that's, you know, written, and like most of that's recorded, and it's just, we're just kind of slowly working our way towards, you know, just having a larger catalog of songs to draw from. But
the first,
yeah, go ahead.
The first music that I ever noticed, you know, sort of independently was Michael Jackson, and then after that it was the Chili Peppers, and then after that it was Run DMC. So, was choosing Michael coming from a place of being a fan, or was it just was it like kind of tongue in cheek?
Yeah, no, well, it's interesting. Like so when I was a kid, I think we talked about it a little bit on the last podcast, but my parents were opera singers, so
right.
I grew up in a weird situation where they had already kind of had their childhood music thing, and then had found this opera thing, and then after finding opera, had kind of reevaluated some of their other music choices. And they're at that weird age where they're in their 30s, 40s, and like, you know, trying to find new music that spoke to them at the time. So like, you know, my dad, when he was growing up, he was listening to cool music like Jimi Hendrix and Jefferson Airplane, The Who, and, you know, Zeppelin. And then by the time I came around, he was listening to like Bobby McFerrin and Al Jarreau, and like Alabama, like
wow.
really not that kind of stuff. So I just had a lot of really interesting musical influences in my life. My mom always kind of held on to the music from her youth, like, but she also listened to a lot of, like, she was really into Whitney Houston and Tina Turner, and she always loved Diana Ross. So like I had a lot of those influences, plus the opera stuff going on in my life. And then like Michael Jackson was obviously, he was just around, and eventually I saw Michael Jackson, and it was just like a totally different thing. I was like, you know, it's like there's all these other people, and they're pretty good, like they're talented and stuff, but I'm like, this guy is something else. Like this is like some next level shit. And when you're a kid and there's someone who can do that, you just are like, oh, okay, so like people can do that. But it's like, no, people can't do that. Right. that guy can do that. And I was definitely, it was the first thing that I latched onto of my own volition, that nobody pushed it on me. I was like, I like that music, I want to hear more of that. And so, and what's really interesting is, and I've talked to a lot of metal fans, and other metal musicians specifically, who, have some kind, where Michael was in some way formative of their, or leading for the way, you know, the way their musical path progressed. And, I think that working with artists like Eddie Van Halen, Jennifer Batten, some of the other, Slash, I mean, he worked with a lot of, different fantastic heavy metal and just great guitar players, lead guitarists. And there was all, you know, the Thriller video was pretty gnarly, like Vincent Price was in it, it's funny, all those little things that you don't think about. And then, but then there are definitely similarities between that music and the music and heavy metal, which was the next thing that I kind of got into of my own volition, because when I was 7, we moved to Germany. My dad got a contract to sing with the Cologne Opera House, and it was supposed to be just like a 2-year thing. We ended up being there for 8 years, and my parents had a lot of guilt about taking a mixed race kid from New York State to a place that they didn't know what to expect, but just to Germany. And I had kind of a rough time of it there for a bit. So, like, to put it this way, I had a lot of Nintendo games and whatchamacallit, like action figures and shit. And sorry, I just realized I left something on the stove. One of the other things that I had to keep me occupied, because also a lot, after school was like very short when I was a kid in Germany. I'd be get there at 8:15 in the morning. I'd come out of summer school. We'd be done by like 11:30 in the morning, noon most of the time. So you'd only be there for a few hours, and then you'd be home. Parents would be at work. So we had cable, and which was kind of a big deal in Germany. Like most people in Germany didn't have cable at the time. I feel like it's kind of a luxury item. But being Americans, we were like, we need TV, and the only way you could get any channels that were in English was if you had cable. And one of the channels we got was MTV. So in '89, when we moved there, like I can name so many different singles from that year, just because that was the first time I saw music videos. And one of the ones that really stuck out to me early on was Trash by Alice Cooper, like that record. The first video I saw was Poison, the Poison video, and it's like, just like shirtless dude on a scaffolding with a giant scarf playing the guitar, and I don't know why that spoke to me as a kid, but maybe it was just the theatrics of it. But that, and then cut to, and then there's the guitar solo, and then cut to Alice, and he's all painted up like a dead cracker on Christmas, whipping himself with the whip, and I was just like, I like this. This is cool. And so it's kind of weird, and I was still into Michael Jackson, and as I was getting into all this other music, and then the first set of allegations came out against him, and I remember just being like, even at that age being like, holy crap, like I don't think it matters whether he did it or not, like this is really gonna taint all of this, right? Like possibly forever. And I just remember being like, this is like having so many emotions about it, but basically just feeling like mouth shut. You know what I mean? I'm like not weigh in, and I'm young, and I don't know anything about anything. All I know is they're accusing him of some crazy ass shit. Now I feel like I can't listen to Michael Jackson's music anymore. But what was crazy, what was interesting about it was, even at that age, I felt like, it's such a weird thing for someone on that kind of level to be accused of, because if they're that famous, like they're going to have the money and the power and the influence to try to squash whatever allegations are coming against them. At the same time, like how hard it's going to be so much harder to quell any rumors or any feelings about it, whether it's true or not, and like we'll never know. And like even at that age, I just remember being like, holy shit, like something that was just so purely awesome in my life is now somehow tainted, and there's nothing to be done about it.
Well, I was defending Michael Jackson before any of that even came out. I mean, it was, especially where I grew up in this town on the Oregon coast, which was a pretty small kind of logging town. Like, that was he was not the artist to like. That's kind of, Hank Williams Jr. country down there, which is fine. But, it just, there was just, and so when that came out, that I think solidified a lot of what people thought of him already. And it went beyond being just kind of a weird, eccentric, millionaire.
Right now he's the lowest form of criminal.
Right.
All this would be whether convicted or not. But it's interesting because like where I went to school, totally different scenario, but British boarding school. It was kind of the same thing, but it was like. It was different because it was like grunge and stuff. Like when I went to prep school, I was cut off from music for 3 years, like the better part of 3 years. I ended up like sneaking a CD player and eventually, but we were only allowed to listen to like religious music and like whatever music that was sanctioned by the school body essentially. And so when I got to secondary school, it was like, oh, all these kids were still listening to grunge, which is already kind of on the outs. Mm-hmm. But just the fact that Michael had like a clean sounding voice with no grit in it was enough for no one to want to like have anything to do with him. And there was definitely an overbearing sense of like machismo, that like there had to be like male singers had to sound like men, kind of vibe going on then. And it was just a really weird, it was like, again, it's kind of the same thing where it was just like, he already kind of wasn't on their radar, and I could tell early on, it was just like, yeah. And I had already kind of accepted that people were going to have their opinions and snap judgments and whatever, and like, you know, and that there's no evidence to stand against that either. So it's just like, you know, what do you do? But what's interesting about that is when this all came around again, like, you know, fast forward however many years, and a lot of that controversy had died down. People had kind of made up their minds how they felt about Michael one way or the other. But I feel like his music had sort of been given a pass again. Like, people were listening again and enjoying again. And it's not just Michael's music, it's also Quincy Jones's music. It's fantastic music. It's amazing. And I remember when he passed, I remember people being genuinely upset. And I remember people being like, you know, and like, I could hear his music all across the country. You'd hear Michael coming out of every business and every, you know, and every few years, it's, you know, so anyway, my last band dissolved, and I was like, you know what, I spent so much time trying to make art that's about like expressing who I am deep inside or some shit, I don't know, like about, you know, or like expressing, you know, you know, how I feel about the world or how I see it. And I was like, you know what, forget all that. I was like, I want to go back to basics. I just want to do something that's just pure entertainment. Mm-hmm. I was like, what's more fucking entertaining than Michael Jackson? Right. Nothing in the world. So I was like, I just want to go and go from that perspective. I was like, my two favorite things in the music growing up as a kid, Michael Jackson, heavy metal. I'm going to put them together, put on a show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Everything was going really good. We were like, just like ramping up. Had our first single done. It sounded great. Super excited to release it. The same month, I swear to God, the week I was going to release it, I found out that the documentary was coming out. The new one, They're Leaving Neverland. And I was just like, you gotta do it. Like, Jesus. And then I was like, okay, so it's a double whammy. Number one, I feel like now I gotta decide whether or not I want to sit on this. You know, do I want to wait? Do I want to wait a couple months to release this? Do I want to wait years? Like, do I want to just, I put so much into this at this point, and, made a lot of sacrifices. I talked to a lot of people about it, and they're like, I think you just got to keep going. And, you know, there's so much.
This one seems to have had the biggest impact so far as far as the history of these allegations go. This documentary seems to, because now the Simpsons episode he was in has been pulled. They don't play it anymore. This really it seems like it cemented whatever opinions people had, I think.
Yeah, but what's interesting is, like, I mean, it's such a weird place for me to be in, because on the one hand, I'm watching the documentary, I'm going, geez, I'm like, these guys, I'm like, you know, why would they have any reason to make any of this up? This is, you know, it's none of this sounds infeasible, you know, but then I had this other voice in my head, because I kept saying, like, I was like, who would make this up? And then I was thinking to myself, and I'm like, yeah, but you know, people make shit like this up. You know, from personal experience, people make shit like this up. Because I had an interesting growing up experience, and experience with sexual assault in myself, just being, you know, being in boarding school for as long as I was. At some point, I was sexually molested by a teacher, and who was a very formative person in my life, who was like, was very instrumental in getting me interested in a lot of things that I'm still interested in to this day, including music, and theater and all kinds of things. And so, like, I'm listening to their stories and I'm going, man, I sympathize with everything they're saying. And then at the same time, some of the stuff they were saying, on the other hand, I would get glimpses of this other person from my past who's a girl that I was seeing in secondary school, and she, I don't know exactly what she was going through, but she had fabricated this really elaborate story about being raped and abused by a friend of the family's, and it was really intense and really insane, and a lot of people got drawn into it, like it heavily affected people's lives in her immediate sphere. And then we came to find out, like, some of these folks had been carrying secrets around about this for like 2 years plus, and it came to find out it was all completely made up, like down to the last detail pretty much. And that, you know, all the physical signs of abuse she had on herself were self-inflicted, and you know, this is an extreme case, but there's her only payoff for any of that was just to feel was to garner pity, so that people would be kind to her, because she felt like people weren't kind to her, and that it was, and that she felt like a big time outsider. So I'm like, you know, and that's a pretty, you know, when you weigh that sort of motivation against, you know, however many millions of dollars, and you go, okay, you know, could someone make something like this up? Like, absolutely. The issue with that documentary is it's only one person's perspective. It's only their camp's perspective, and there's no control. There's no alternate perspective. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of people would say, why should you give license to, you know, the other side to defend themselves? But it's like, I mean, Michael can't defend himself. He's dead. Right. Like, there's some part of, like, pissing on a dead man's legacy that's, like, already been dragged through the mud. That's just, you go, I don't know, really. And then and then if you watch, there's, you know, a lot of footage of other dispositions, and those guys, at least one of them being questioned by the police, and having different answers to all of these things, and like not like having contrary stories to a lot of the things that are told and corroborated in the documentary. So it pisses me off, because I'm like, if you're gonna do this, like, get it right, like, right, and do it the right way, and allow, you know, people are still gonna allow people to draw their conclusions, and allow for there to be, like, it invalidates their arguments to not have any other viewpoint put forward. And I know I'm not the only person who feels that way. It's by nature poor documentary making. It's poor journalism. And now that sounds callous and shitty, because it's like, yeah, who cares about poor journalism in the face of these guys, you know, the tragedy that befell them? But it's, I guess, as someone who's been through sexual abuse themselves, and as someone who has known people who have been through sexual abuse, and as someone who has known people who have lied about sexual abuse, I feel like there's enough doubt in my mind to where I'm like, I can't side with you. Mm-hmm. And what sucks about that is, like, you know, I also feel like you're trying to, like, if it's not true, then this is shitty what you're doing. But if it is true, then it's shitty that I don't believe you. Right. You know, so it's just it's the way that whole thing happened. It just, I feel like they could have gone about it in a better way. And again, it's like, that maybe seems insensitive, but it's like, you're not just like, if you're gonna kill the king, like, in front of everybody, like, get the job done, like, do it correctly, make us see why the king was supposed to die. Don't just give a bunch more doubt and a bunch more division. And, like, you know, it's still, I still hear Michael Jackson's music. Like, it hasn't been crushed. It's never going to be eradicated.
Well, and I think that's what, you know, it's not really fair for anybody to make that decision because, you know, only a handful of people know what really went down, and the rest of us, we have what we've been presented.
Right.
And, you know, and it's hard to separate that I've liked Michael Jackson since I was 5 years old from in his music and his videos from, you know,
from his alleged crimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is, and that's something. I mean, as soon as this, like, I already when I first started this group and I invited a bunch of people to be in it, I was like, look, you know that there could be some time down the road when, like, some shit pops off or whatever. And I think I was worried more about it, like, if this goes anywhere and we make any headway and something pops off, are we going to get any backlash? I didn't expect it to happen before we were even out the gate. Right. So, like, in a way, like, I don't know. In a way, I almost feel like it's a positive thing for us, just because we walked into the Lions Den kind of already knowing exactly what we're dealing with, and we're at that very tenuous position of, you know, trying to represent and trying to show people this sort of musical experiment we've undertaken, while not trying to necessarily champion or deride the artists whose music we're performing. And it's like a tightrope, you know, because we're trying to invoke the theatricality of them. It's like, how do you invoke the theatricality and the essence of the man without invoking the man himself? Right. And it's, but, you know, the cool thing about it is that, you know, people realize that we're not that, and we're just a bunch of entertainers. Like, we're just trying to make some fun, cool sounding music. Yeah. And really, like, all I wanted to do is, like, I just wanted to sort of show that a common thread of energy runs through all music, really. And that, you know, I was talking to somebody earlier today, like, I feel like not just in music and in creativity, but across the board in this country right now, I think people just need to just, like, turn the Scrabble board, just a quarter turn. Like, I feel like especially now, people are so reactionary and so busy looking at, you know, they've got their 4 letters left or whatever, and they're still trying to make a 5-letter word, and they just can't see it, and it's frustrating as fuck. And it's like, I feel like that's all I was trying to do, really, was just sort of take the board of music and be like, we're all doing this. And, like, what if we just turn the board a quarter turn and look at it a slightly different way? And that also was born out of not wanting to just be a band that just, you know, you get up on stage and we play our songs and we get off, and that's, you know, you see 5 bands like that, and then that's the end of the show. Like, trying to figure out a way to try to put some value back into the art form, so that we can spend a little more money trying to put on a little bit more of a production, a little bit more of a spectacle, and trying to sort of move performance back into a more sustainable art form on an underground level. Because at the moment, it's like we've got this whole pay-to-play scenario that seems to be king, where, you know, major promoters will have a big name international touring act coming through, and then they'll basically depending on who they think is a good fit, and who they think can sell the most tickets, they'll ask them to come on. Then they basically give you a bunch of tickets, and they say you have to sell this many tickets. Any tickets you don't sell, if you don't sell this many tickets, you're responsible for the money, for the difference, basically. And then anything you sell over that amount of tickets is yours. But normally, most bands can't meet their ticket quota. And so then what ends up happening is they end up putting more bands on the bill. So you could think you're open, you're playing a decent slot, maybe second or third out of a 5-band bill, and and then you're going on at this time, yada yada yada, and then that's how many ways the money's getting split, and then you find out, well, so and so's band didn't sell enough tickets, other band didn't sell enough tickets, so now they've added 2 more bands onto the bill, so now you got 7 bands on the bill, and the day of the show they add 1 more, open the doors at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the show ends at midnight, no one's staying to stand around and watch music for 7 hours straight.
Right.
So now people are just coming to see the bands that they want to see. So they're just coming to see one band. They're paying full price to see one band. Many people get discouraged by this whole thing. Others don't come at all. The bar doesn't make enough money because people aren't hanging out drinking. The only people who get taken care of really are the promoters and the touring bands who get enough to get to the next location, and then everybody else gets the shaft. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, so I don't know if I had a chance to succeed with this with a different format, but just trying to take a little bit more of the responsibility of putting on the events into my own hands, and to have more control across the board of the quality of stuff that's going on, to have control over how long the event's going to be, how many acts are going to be in it, to be able to set it, and to be able to, and to hopefully be able to promise people a night of quality entertainment that only runs 3.5 hours, like a reasonable amount of time for someone to want to come and be entertained, without a whole bunch of bullshit time wasting in the middle. You show up, you sit, you drink, 3.5 hours, you're out the door, and you have something to talk about at the end of the night, as opposed to showing up 2/3 of the way through a show, watching one band, drinking half a shitty beer, and then being like, okay, I'm out as soon as the next band starts playing. So
sounds pretty noble.
Yeah, we'll see if it works. It could take a giant shit, and I could be banned from Dante's, and
so,
and they'll run me out of town on a rail. But I was just like, I told the promoter, we got to take a chance and try to do something a little bit different. So I said, no 7, 8 extreme metal bands on a bill. I was like, put us on. I was like, I got a couple other musical acts. I got this guy, Mike Sprigo, who's an old time, he's been playing in bands in Portland since the 70s. And now he just does like a one-man act thing. I've known him for years, and he's a great opening act, very interesting, very funny. And I've got a group of ladies who are going to be doing a combined piece that involves like chain aerial acrobatics, and there's a lead cellist who plays really crazy like haunting music over like a loop pedal and effects, and then I've got an extreme piercing opera singer who's going to do some crazy stuff with needles and singing, and then we've got a surf rock group, instrumental surf rock, called Neptune's Chargers, and then we've also got this fantastic local comic, Hijinks, who's going to be hosting the whole thing, and doing a 25-minute set. And so it's going to be a whole bunch of different types of entertainment all in one place. And I'm hoping that it will be a night to remember.
It sounds pretty good. Sounds like the complete package. So did metal have the same kind of impact that MJ did, or did it sort of have to grow on you a little?
Yeah, it had to grow on me, but it was really different. I think in that respect, Michael was something that I automatically gravitated towards. Heavy metal was something that I liked inherently, but conflicted with my religious scruples at that age. And I was a little bit worried that a lot of what they were singing about was conflicting pretty heavily with what I was being told about how, God works in the world. And but I was also at a point in my life where I was starting to experience some serious questions and doubts in myself about, how the world worked and what I'd been told about how the world worked and what role I was going to be playing in the world. And I don't know exactly when the moment was, but at some point I just decided that, if the music spoke to me as much as it did, which was it was very different. Like, I was in a very different place when I started listening to heavy metal, and it just it helped me at the time, like, for who I was. It the same way Michael was very uplifting and affirming, I think, in a way, as a young kid. Like, this, like, heavy metal for me was affirming in a different way, that, like, you're not crazy, and there is a lot of fucked up, stupid shit going on all around you, and people are going to pretend like it's not the case. So, like, don't let them make you think you're nuts. So it's kind of like the message that I took away from it in a weird way. And it's the one thing I will say about heavy metal that has, like, stayed true to me throughout my life. Like, a lot of, your heroes will rise and fall, and people come and go, and scenes come and go, and ideologies come and go. But, like, I definitely, like if you know what you know, like, stick to your guns. Don't let anybody else tell you what the world is. Like, that's kind of what I took away from it. And it became like it became a huge. I mean, MTV is probably partially to blame for that. The sort of the tribalistic sort of I don't know what you call it. Sort of environment that MTV built around being affiliated or associated with different musical genres, but it was like being a mixed race kid living in Germany. It was hard to have a sense of identity. Nobody had any idea, knew anything about Black American people at all. So there's, like, no presuppositions, which is kind of nice, but it's like there's also a lot of really bizarre questions and, just a lot of misunderstanding. And so, when I was, like, I don't know, I think probably 9 or 10 years old, I was at a World of Music, which was a giant, record store in Cologne, Germany, and I would get 10 Deutschmarks a week for doing chores. So that's like, bed, vacuum, cleaning the toilets, that kind of stuff, dishes. 10 Deutschmarks at the end of the week, and a CD cost exactly 30 Deutschmarks back then. So every 3 weeks, I'd be able to go buy a new record. That's all I spent money on. Didn't buy candy or anything like that. Just records. So I got to World of Music, and I was fingering through some Black Sabbath albums, and I had some hairy interactions with some Germans at that point, so I was, like, kind of on guard most of the time. But I just very, very large, tall, like old school, like, German Hesher, denim jacket, long scraggly hair, like a shirt tied around his waist, walks up to me and is just like, and talking to me very exuberantly and loudly in German, and I was just like, I was still, I think that I must have like just 9. I was like, I understood pretty good German, but I was still learning, and he had this crazed look in his face, and I was just like kind of shook my head, and he just said, English? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, American? And I was like, yeah. And he said, He said, American. He's like, do you like Black Sabbath? And I said, yes, yeah, I like Black Sabbath very much. And he says, okay. He says, have you ever heard, and he pulls his shirt open, and he's wearing a Manowar t-shirt. He says, have you ever heard Manowar? And I was like, no, I've never heard of this band. And he says, Manowar is the greatest heavy metal band in all the world. Like, I'm not even kidding. It was like straight out of a comic book. And he said, this is a good album here. And he grabs the Triumph of Steel and puts it into my hand. And he's like, you must buy this album. And I was like, okay, man. And he said something to me in German, and he clapped me on the shoulder, and he went on his way. And it was I didn't really realize it at the time, but it was the first kindness that a complete stranger had showed me since I got to the country.
Wow.
And it was like, so it was this bizarre thing of like, first being like afraid, like I'm about to get jumped, like I'm about to get knocked the fuck out by this gigantic person, to being like, oh no, he's cool with me, to being like, he's trying to like show me about some shit. And what was interesting, what I didn't understand at the time, was the nature of conformity in Germany and West Germany at that time, specifically, probably still to this day. But that anyone who stepped outside the norm, so like anyone who dressed differently, listened to different music, whatever, goth music, punk, metal, you were labeled an Aussie, which is short for asozial, asocial. And if you were an Aussie, that was like they're throwing around like kind of a throwaway word, but there was something to it, like being like you were apart from, you were like a breed apart. And I remember the first time I heard the song "Where Eagles Dare" by the Misfits, and I remember saying, "Holy shit, that's the punk rockers in West Germany." Because when I came back to the States, I see punk rockers, I'd be like, oh, well, these kids are sort of nice and cuddly and like playful. Because like the kids in Germany were like literal like safety pins in their face, Liberty spikes every day. They only wore black leather and chains. And they were not fucking happy campers. They were not pleasant. They hated everybody, but they were okay to me. Yeah. Which was weird. They left me alone. And I started to realize that a bunch of these different groups of people that had been labeled asocial were kind of like, I mean, not all of them, like, you never know. Some of them were very antisocial, but that they were actually, it was just, no, they just don't conform.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so even the Germans can't crush the spirit of this. There's got to be something to it, you know? So that was kind of, that kind of opened the floodgates for me then to just be like, screw it, I'm sort of walking down this heavy metal road. And my parents, much to their credit, just kind of let me do it. I don't think my mom was very into it. I remember when my dad bought that first Alice Cooper record for me, and like he read the lyrics in front of me, and it was just like, he's like, like, I like this lyric here where he says, "You're such a high class tramp, but when you hit the sheets, you just turn to trash." And I was like, yeah, I mean, and he's like, what, do you even know what this means? It's not really about that for me, man. It's just like the overall feel and the music. He was like, all right. I was like, I may regret this, but I'm gonna let you go with it, because I feel like if I try to hide it from you, it's just gonna make it worse. Yeah. So that was kind of that, and then it's funny because I think they just thought it was going to be a phase, you know. Like he'll grow out of it, and he'll find some other thing. I went through other phases with music and with identity and stuff, but somewhere along the line, like, I don't know when it was that I was just like, no, this is me. Like, like I'm this music, this vibration somehow is in direct correlation with my being. Because I feel like if you're kind of like into heavy metal or you're not. Like there's some people who are like, oh yeah, I like some metal stuff, but they don't really. Like they can stand to listen to it, but they're not recognizing songs, you know.
So was there ever a pull to produce or even listen to more traditional, I don't know, black music like hip hop or funk or blues or?
Oh sure, yeah. I mean, I so when I was like 14 years old, I'd been in Europe for 6 years, and I got to go back to the States on my own for the first time. I was 14. I went back to my hometown, and I met up with a bunch of kids I hadn't seen in years and years and years and years, like since kindergarten, first grade. And they were all my friends growing up in Binghamton were almost all black. And they were really into, like my buddy Andre, he introduced me to the Onyx, and they introduced me to Biggie Smalls, and they introduced me to EDP, just like a bunch of different like New York hip hop stuff. And then back in England, like the Fugees had just kind of made a splash in Europe, so like hip hop was starting to come into the mainstream a little more. And then I had one friend in school who was like savvy, he had some cousins in the States, and he had been hanging out with them, and they had exposed him to like all kinds of stuff, Ice Cube and P. Diddy and whatever else was going on. But I guess he was still Puff Daddy back then. So he had some stuff, and then I started getting a hold of some records, and we figured out that our buddy Neil used to have kind of a hip hop bug, which was weird because he was like this one Scottish kid who just happened to be really into, this kid had like only Built for Cuban links when he was like 14 years old.
Yeah, that's tight. Raekwon.
I was like, where the hell did you get this?
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me that copy of Only Built for Cuban links that I still have today.
Raekwon, for those wondering what he's talking about, that's an album by Raekwon the Chef with the Wu-Tang Clan.
And personally my favorite solo Wu-Tang record of all time. I know most people prefer Liquid Swords, and then you have your fans who love the first ODB record. But
it's Iron Man for me.
See, that's fine. For me, there's just nothing darker, grittier, just like it's just like you can taste the street on Only Built for Cuban links. It's amazing. I love that record. But yeah, so they just like infected me. Like the Onyx and Biggie really got under my skin, and Bone Thugs and Harmony. I forgot about Bone.
Love Bone.
It just really got under my skin, and so then I went back to Germany and was like, they did have that stuff available. So then I started buying hip hop records. Well, then when I go to the States, I was working summer jobs, but I was like living with my aunts, and like I was just clowning, because in England people had really gotten into brand name clothes and shit, but they didn't have anything like TJ Maxx out there. So I would go to TJ Maxx and just buy up like tons of like slightly defective name brand clothes, and like tons of CDs. And that's all I would spend my money on is clothes and CDs. And I would go back to England just like flossing. People would be like, "Oh my God, like how can you afford to wear all this stuff?"
Yeah.
But what was interesting was once the only reason I really had a connection to the black community in Binghamton was because I'm from there and I grew up there. But when I would go back, like I was like, I know, like I'm still a little removed, I'm pretty square compared to these kids. So I was like, but I wanted to hang out, I wanted to be involved, and they got into some crazy shit, and they were having some times. I was like, I gotta ingratiate myself to these shit. So I was just like, I was always buying music, and one day I just happened to be at my friend's house, and I had my whole CD binder with me, and they were like, "Oh, what do we listen to? What do we listen to?" And they were like, "Oh, we heard that." I was like, "Oh, I got my CDs here," and it was just like, and I had just been buying. I had like 80 discs at that point or something like that. I eventually ended up having like, I don't know, 400 hip hop records or something like that. So then it was just like, then I just automatically got invited to everything because I had all the music and I had people who would buy beer for me. So I was like, because in England we were drinking from a younger age, and so everybody I hung out with was like, oh yeah, he drinks, like whatever, he can have beer. So I ended up, so like through that, I would start to be at parties and I hear somebody else play something that I'd never heard before that I thought was cool. I'd be like, shit, I gotta get it. So I was just really, I was really crazy deep into hip hop right around until No Limit really broke out. Mm-hmm. When No Limit Records really was in the thick of it, when they were just releasing 10 albums a month and everybody's on the record and it just churning stuff out and most of it's garbage and they're just making it, and then there's just but there's a few gems, and somewhere around there I got jaded in the whole hip hop scene at the time. And that was where I was at, but I was just like, man, I was like, why don't we spend all our time sitting around listening to these guys talk about how great they got it and how shitty our lives are, how great their lives are, and they got all these cars, I ain't got no cars, they got all these girls, I ain't got no girls, I was like, it's weird, motherfucker, I know you're paid, I just bought your record for how, and I felt like somewhere along the line that the soul had gone out of it. Then you start, then like anything else, you start to see behind the scenes a little bit. Ice Cube was my shit. I put my eggs in that Ice Cube basket. This the hardest motherfucker that ever was, ever will be. He's the baddest rapper. Wrote rhymes for everybody. He invented the game. And then then are we there yet? Now it's just oh God, right. What's happening here? And then it's and then you still try to go back and do a record and try to be hard, and I'm like, oh God, stop, Cube, just choose. Right. You're old now, fine, be a dad. Stop trying to be tough. But when the veil started getting pulled off, which is true, I think so much use music of that time. Once the smoke and mirrors is gone, it's it's just a guy. It's an artist. It's kind of disheartening. Although ultimately, I think it's a good thing. Yeah. But yeah, I've tried my hand at a little hip hop production at one point. I tried to MC it a little bit. I realized at some point that it's I don't have, I've got some crazy life experiences, but they don't necessarily lend themselves to hip hop MCing, I feel like. And I don't have, I don't, I think I'm not about that nerdcore style. And I feel like that's what my shit would end up coming out. Yeah. If I'm going to rap about things that really happened to me, there's some dark shit in there, but it's not particularly gangster. And I don't wear fancy clothes. I don't kind of a broke ass bitch. I just don't. I don't want to go out there and I can't go out there in front. What am I going to rhyme? What am I going to rhyme about? How I walked 4 blocks to the corner store to buy 240s of Big Bear. That's not. Yeah. Boston, So I just I was just I have to admit to myself that I can be a hip hop fan, but I can't really be involved in the scene because I haven't lived that life.
Well, we got about 5 minutes left. Did you want to plug your upcoming show at Dante's?
Yeah, absolutely. Service Night Celebration, the 30th of October, day before Halloween. $25 entrance, $20 with a costume. It's going to be all sorts of stuff. Come see the spectacle. It's comedy, music, acrobatics, and a little bit of darkness thrown in. So come check us out. It'll be the real deal. We got Mike Sprigo, Neptune's Chargers, Confessions, Hijinks, and Full Metal Jackson.
What's the crowd look like at a Full Metal Jackson show?
I mean, it's kind of it's interesting because we definitely have mostly a metal following. That's also because up until recently, most of the people in the group have played in predominantly metal bands. Our new lead guitarist is actually more of like a funk blues jazz guy, and so he's going to have a whole different demographic who are used to seeing his other stuff coming out to check out what he's doing now, and we're really hoping to try to sort of bridge a bit of a gap, so maybe draw in some Michael fans who aren't necessarily metal fans, and to give some metal fans a slightly different approach to Michael's music to appreciate, sort of maybe just get to what's the word I'm looking for? Get to reconnect with it in a fresh way, and yeah.
I think I fall into that category because, like you said earlier, you kind of like it or you don't. And
right.
I've had a blast at metal shows, many of them, but it's never inspired me to go buy one to listen to in my car, an album.
I mean, that's a pretty common thing, I think. I think that's up until very, very recently, and still to this day. I think it's live music at the end of the day.
Right.
And the first time, I mean, my father, both my parents didn't see me play metal till I was playing a metal band till I was quite older. And my dad saw a rehearsal. And was just like, you could sort of tell immediately. He was like, yeah. He's like, I've heard you listen to this stuff in the car for however many years. He's like, you don't really get a sense of how much goes into it till you see it. Because if your ear's not tuned to it, it's just like sounds like a bunch of distortion and static and screaming.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom too. She's more so. She does not get it. She doesn't like it. She doesn't like the music. She doesn't like the singing. She doesn't like anything about it really. But she really enjoyed herself at the show. She was dancing around and having a good time, and so we get. I think it could appeal to a lot of different people purely because we don't stick to any one style. So, if you're not really into more abrasive sort of heavy metal style, well, we got a nice easy butt rock song for you to get down to next. And if you don't like butt rock, well, we got a little gothic doom for you next. And if you don't like gothic doom, well, that's all right because we got a little Van Halen one for you next. If you don't like Van Halen, that's all right. You know what I mean? We got a little Black Sabbath number for you. So we're just trying to. Like I said, the purpose of this is entertainment, and there's something about hearing songs that inherently that even you maybe haven't heard in a while performed in a completely different way. That's just I don't know. It's just a little exciting.
Yeah, I'm psyched. I'd like to check it out sometime.
I hope you can make it to the show.
And is there anywhere online to hear it?
Yes, if you go to fullmetaljackson.bandcamp.com, we've got the single for Dangerous is out now. We're going to be releasing our new single for The Way You Make Me Feel in conjunction with this event on the 30th. And I've still got a couple of potential guest appearances as well that I'm not going to announce yet because they haven't been confirmed, but it's exciting stuff, though. We'll see.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, our hour's up. Thank you again for coming back for part 2.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah, we got. All right, there you have it. There was Quinton Gardner talking a little bit about Full Metal Jackson. Next week, I'm going to be talking to Rembrandt Street. He's a Shoshone Paiute in Navajo native who contacted me, and we are going to be discussing responsibilities we have to carry on tradition and message to future Native American generations. This ought to be another interesting episode. Again, somebody I've never met, and just they actually got a hold of me, and so we'll see how that goes. Thanks for listening, and if you made it all the way to the end, kudos to you. Have a good one. See ya.